Hey everybody, we're here at CoinFund Q&A with Robert from Mysterium. Robert, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Robert, do you want to give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into doing this blockchain project and what it is?
Okay. Sure. I have been in startups, tech startups, for quite a while already. Been working with Trust Tribe, a startup for basically building a reputation system for sharing economy companies, basically uniting your reputation from all different places into one. It's a failed startup, but that was my most loved one, I guess. Sold couple IT companies. One is Lithuanian, English Lithuanian teaching courses online and so on. So yeah, I've been in IT for quite a while, and well, I actually learned about Bitcoin, I don't know, very early in 2009, 10. I didn't understand it really well back then. I downloaded the mining software, but didn't really like, I don't know, something I didn't like. So yeah, that's I guess I'm sorry about that today. And yeah, learned about Ethereum before it was launched. Got really excited and been following Ethereum since then. And you know, learning about the projects, have been missing all the projects that have real world usage on Ethereum. There of course there are certain, and especially today there are more and more, but still it's a new, and infrastructure is being built. So I'm excited that these foundational elements are being placed. So eventually, I realized that well, security is an area. Privacy is something that could be highly improved using technologies like blockchain, decentralizing basically it. Because if you have privacy providing companies, centralized companies, well, it's not really that private using them.
So tell us a little bit about like what is Mysterium? How are you thinking about it? What is it supposed to do?
What is Mysterium? Well, Mysterium is, well, it's a decentralized VPN. It will allow people to basically download our open source software and provide whatever unused bandwidth they have in a form of VPN service to those who need that service. Up till now, VPNs, mostly how they're used is you buy a service from some company, and this company has an infrastructure of VPN nodes, VPN servers all over the place, and you basically download their custom built, closed source, by the way, apps, and you connect to that infrastructure, and all of the traffic is going, well, basically through their hands. What we want to build is, we want to decentralize that, so that the traffic would, well, the way we will build it, it's going to be, once phase one is complete, it's going to be a completely decentralized network, meaning that nothing will go through our servers. It's just gonna, it's gonna be a connection of various technologies like a node software, state channeling happening between a node and a customer, then on the blockchain, smart contracts, delivering certain elements of the service. So it's a combination of different things into one.
Okay, so just to step back one second. So what do people typically use VPN for? What is it for?
For many things. one of the things I use it for is when you go to a publicly available Wi-Fi, all of your traffic could be very easily overtaken and analyzed by basically anybody sitting there with very cheap and simple technology. So so yeah, to basically protect yourself against anybody who's trying to get that information, your private information, whatever you're doing on the net, into their hands. VPN, what it does is it encrypts all the traffic from your computer or your smartphone, any device, to the node hardware. So no internet service provider, no Wi-Fi providers, no hackers in the middle can access that information. Other than that, well, people, you guys in the States don't really have this problem, I guess, but people outside of here have a content problem because of, let's say, intellectual property rights. Certain Netflix shows are not available in many countries because of that. So what people do, they wow, hello, this is Valdez, our another team member. He's the person.
Hi there.
He's the person who has been developing our MVP, and well, basically the architect behind the software aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
so,
so,
yeah,
so getting back to the VPN. So typically,
yeah.
On a high level, VPNs are used for privacy. It's like you don't want to see, or you don't want to expose like your requests to the network, so they could be analyzed and whatever and seen. You might have various motivations to do that, but the fundamental one is that you just want to maintain kind of your device's privacy. And then in the traditional sense, right, you have typically a centralized company which gives you a VPN software, and then it's able to route the traffic. Like you connect to that, to that server, and it routes the traffic to wherever you're going. So the obvious kind of property of a centralized setup like that is, of course, that that's not the best way to protect your privacy, because theoretically someone could come into that centralized server, maybe hack it, get the data in some other way, and basically expose you and still get through to the information that you want. So in a decentralized network, what you're saying is that you remove the central company there.
Yeah.
And you have basically a peer-to-peer network of nodes that are providing VPN. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about how that works.
Oh, that. Well, first of all, we have to create the whole infrastructure for that. We already, by the way, have an MVP working. We launched it. Oh, well, please correct me if I'm wrong. 2.5 weeks ago, and it does not include lots of elements which will be included in a final product. Like it's free now. So basically, people have been downloading our VPN MVP nodes and installing them on their machines, and you could connect to them, and you could use a free VPN at the moment. It's for testing purposes, and it's working well. But how it will work? It will, well, somebody will install a node software on their computer. This node software then would inform the network that I am available, I have this capacity, and I have these parameters, and you're able to use my service. Now somebody else who is on the other end is searching their they are connecting to a discovery mechanism, which eventually is going to be on the blockchain. You find the right one. You negotiate with when I say you negotiate, the softwares talk to each other and negotiate a deal. Once they're okay, you start using it, and it clears the payments automatically on the blockchain. It verifies the validity of the service. I don't know. There's so many moving parts. Which one to talk about? But yeah,
let's kind of start at a high level and we can drill down a little bit. So basically what you're describing is a marketplace, right, between people who are demanding VPN and people who are supplying kind of nodes in the Mysterium network that support VPN functionality.
Exactly.
And what can you tell us about sort of the demand for VPN, and what can you tell us about the supply of VPN today?
Both are growing, I guess. There's various reasons. Lots of countries have been updating their policies on privacy and how they deal with it. For example, FCC ruled that internet service providers are allowed to track whatever you're using, whatever you're doing on the internet, to store that data and even sell it. No restrictions there. People are getting more and more aware about those policies, and certainly they want to protect themselves. So demand side is growing. It's currently a huge market, around $40 billion market, and it's estimated to grow to enormous heights.
Is that globally or just
yeah, that is a global number.
Okay.
So obviously there's a problem. Of course, I'm not even talking about let's say certain Asian countries or Middle East, where there's lots of censorship. VPNs as well provide the means to break away from that censorship. So yeah, demand side is pretty. It's an awareness thing, and it's a very growing one, and not just awareness, but in certain cases, very solid need for that service.
What's the typical what's the profile of the typical VPN provider these days? Is there like one giant company that services most of the VPN in the world, or are there a bunch of little companies operating kind of locally?
There are lots of players, actually. There are some big companies operating in state. Well, they are kind of themselves quite hidden companies. You don't really know where they are located because they have headquarters and offices all over the place. Usually it's not a single entity. It's many entities combined together because you have different laws and regulations in different jurisdictions. But yeah, there are some big players and there's lots of small companies.
Yeah, I would mention that competitiveness of this market is very big. If there was 20 players 1 year ago, they are competing for first top 10 places very high. For example, we have company in our neighborhood which launched VPN company just, I think, 2 years ago. I got job offer from them to come. So it was only 5 guys. Now we are 50 engineers developing world's famous VPN from very little country, but they establish legal entities in Panama and so on. But they have limited numbers of servers. For example, this company I'm talking about has 1,000 servers. And when we launched 3 weeks ago our minimal value product. So we got so many support from our community that we was able to install those. We got 50 testers in alpha testing, but now we already have 1,000 nodes. People is buying dedicated servers and just installing our software, and they have so, and we cover it all worldwide quite quickly. If they need to cover other countries which they don't support, they must establish legal entity.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things, it sounds like you're pointing to the fact that demand for VPN is kind of growing. I would love to kind of dig into some of the data around that, and just see, and what's driving that growth. Is it that people are becoming more aware of privacy issues in our more technological world? Is it like governments becoming more invasive and kind of pushing the markets to do it? What do you guys think?
It's many things. One of them is governments becoming more invasive. Other is companies becoming more invasive. There are more and more ways to track and abuse and store this data and do something with it without your awareness that this is being done to you. There is a very increasing demand on the work side of things. When you have a remote workforce and you need a secure their connection to your infrastructure as a corporation, there you need a VPN access as well. There is a traveling people. There are all those countries with forgot the word, censorship. And all of those things combined together, of course, the technological growth, and we all have one or few gadgets on our hands every day. So it's just many trends combining into one huge trend.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to add that there is no like one rule. What is VPN client? There is so many different client segments that basically in each country that some country starts to regulate something with a legal legal regulation is put strictly, then you have a bunch of clients in that country. The same happened in USA now when this privacy, people are starting to be afraid of privacy attacks, I would name. So you have USA as new market, but before, censorship in China was the biggest market. The same in Japan, there is other needs. In small countries, people just can't watch Netflix, and they want to watch Netflix through IP of USA. And I would name that there are so many different reasons. It's not only about people who is doing illegal stuff.
Yes.
Needs to browse internet anonymously.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about how compensation works in these, or I should say revenue generation, how it works in the context of centralized networks and the decentralized VPN network that you're proposing.
Yeah.
So in the centralized network, obviously, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the predominant business model is just subscription, right? You buy some amount of time or some amount of bandwidth, and then you pay like a fixed fee for that, and then that recurs as you keep using it. How does that revenue generation model change when you go into a decentralized network?
Okay, I can add to that. One thing is to realize the cost of the service that's being provided and the cost to the provider. And the other thing is a price that a customer is paying currently. A cost of one transferred gigabyte of data is about 2-3 cents. On average, when you add up all the users, and users usually pay what, $3 to $10 a month. It's a subscription, and based on that subscription, you can use all the data, usually all the data that you want. What happens, what ends up happening in the reality, people don't use that much data. So what happens is they pay on average $3 to $5 per gigabyte, and the cost is 2 to 3 cents. So you can imagine the margins of currently. What we expect to happen is we expect those costs to drop with a decentralized network, because it's going to be an open market. Perfect competition, I think, principle will kick in. And basically we will see price drops, I don't know, tens, maybe up to 100 times. We'll just have to see, but there's lots of foundation for a significant price drop. And the way currently we structure a pricing mechanism is basically you pay for what you use. So you use a couple megabytes, you just pay, 0.5 cents for that.
Mm-hmm. And the other major distinction, right, is that in the centralized model, obviously all these subscriptions are going to the provider.
Yeah.
In the decentralized model, you have many providers, and those providers are independent kind of players on the network, right? They're not necessarily affiliated with you. And so what you're doing is you're paying that revenue to the individual providers.
Exactly.
Do you see that those providers will typically be kind of just individuals who are running your software, or do you see that maybe companies will set up under this kind of business model?
Okay, interesting question. Of course, I would love to see a network composed of many people who are just setting up their laptop, a node on their laptop once they're not using it, and making $1 or $2. We hopefully this will happen, but we think this might not be the actual reality once the network is bigger and established already, like 2-3 years down the road. Because of certain legal limitations, because of maybe bandwidth and optimization elements, probably what will happen, some people will set up companies, or somebody will set up a company and will allow other people to join them under one, umbrella, and provide the service for the local from let's say local providers. It's still to be seen how this will play out. Also, what might happen is people who will take this professionally, they might optimize the revenues. For example, internally, I think of it as mining a certain resource. And the resource here is a bandwidth. It's unused. It's your unused bandwidth. You buy an unused bandwidth similar to VPNs. Currently, you just pay a monthly subscription, but it doesn't necessarily mean you use all of that. Most cases you don't. So you're mining that unused bandwidth capacity. Also, there are other networks being built right now which mine different resources. For example, storage allows you to mine your unused hard drive space. Golem will allow you to mine your unused CPU power. So why not combine them in one machine and optimize the incomes from those different mining of different resources? I believe that this will happen as well.
So that seems like a compelling kind of case where you can say, look, I'm just going to kind of be a lot more efficient, and I'm going to be able to charge by bandwidth rather than by time, the way most of these other providers do it. I'm going to drop costs by 10% or by 10 times, right? So that seems to be a compelling kind of efficiency that you can introduce. But given that the revenue is going to, individual nodes, how do you guys at Mysterium envision that you will generate revenue? Will you be miners on the network, or is there another model there?
Well, we could be miners on the network. Also, what we plan to do is, in the beginning, this will be basically an access type of service, where you have MIST tokens, and you access the service using those tokens. Since payment clearing will take place in a smart contract deployed by us as a team, we will have a very small commission, which will cover basically support and tech support, to cover tech support. So this is in the beginning. To progress forward, we want MIST token to become a profit sharing token, basically meaning that all the transactions that are taking place are not taking place in MIST, but in MIST token, but instead in some more common currency, let's say Ether, and the small cut of the transactions is then distributed to all MIST token owners. On the technological side of things, it's not a big issue. It's solvable and quite easily. The problem, of course, is with the legal side. We will have to find a way to make it safe for the network and for the token owners, for the node owners, for the whole operation, the transition there.
Cool. And you touched on compliance. Can we touch upon kind of the compliance of individual nodes on the network? So we kind of talked about this briefly the other day. If you are a provider of VPN services on the network, then you are in some jurisdiction. And what kind of compliance issues does a node provider have to think about?
When you say compliance issues, English is not my first.
What I mean is, like, if you're providing a node and you are in Russia, right? Your compliance might be different than if you're providing a node and you're in China, or you're providing a node in the United States. So can you talk a little bit about the differences between jurisdictions? And
most likely, these will be big differences for all the different jurisdictions. So our job, the way we see it, is basically helping node providers, making their life a lot easier, as easy as it's possible on our side. So as a first step, we will basically work and do due diligence on each jurisdiction, and come up with a set of guidelines how to operate a node operation as safely as possible in that jurisdiction. On top of that, we will install a technological protections. Let's say a simple example would be white or blacklisted actions and destinations, which basically are monitored by the community, and the node operator would then be able to turn them on and off. So let's say if somebody is providing a node here in States, they would be, say, able to just allow whitelisted activities and destinations.
Awesome.
And this way protect themselves against anything highly malicious or dangerous, also limiting their income potential. So there's, you know, flip side of this.
Cool. So let's turn to the technology a little bit. Valdis, you mentioned that you guys have put out an MVP. Can you guys tell us, like, what are the functionalities that are live right now? What are the pieces that are implemented in the MVP today?
So we launched a node VPN server. People can install it in it's very simple, lightweight software. They installed it on any machine. It's platform independent. Currently, we just skipped Windows. It's too much to debug problems, but it's working on Macs and Unix-based systems. And also, some people launched it on Arduinos. Very interesting. The community just solved those problems, and they launched those nodes on really micro processors. It's very lightweight. We wrote it with Golang, so it's basically like C-level language, and it takes just 20 megabytes of RAM. And here you are. You have your brandway. Basically, it fixes routing of your Ethernet board, and it doesn't take much resources from machine, so you can easily run something else on this machine, unless it just eats your network. But we didn't test it yet, didn't benchmark how much it eats network, but I think you will be able to do things yourself still. So we concentrated it to be lightweight. And at the same time, we introduced the VPN client. People can connect to those nodes, and but this VPN client is just very technical. It's command line currently, and we are not able yet to introduce the user interface for each operating system. So, but later it will be a widget in each operating system.
The experience today is that, you know, if you're a node provider, you have to basically go download your software, either on a Mac or a Linux machine, and run a server, and then another person can go and download the client. I believe it's also a command line client today, right? And then you basically have to choose a node on the network to connect to, and then you just get VPN. So how does the client today find like what nodes to connect to?
At the same time, we launched the tool which we call dashboard. People, it's like marketplace in one place in our centralized server currently, where people find each other. It's like they find a node by country which we are interested in, and they can pick interested node. But later we are aiming to have auto discovery mechanism. Almost all current VPN clients have this workflow. When you choose one country, one IP, and you basically go out through this IP. But we are planning that you will instead of that, you will set up your requirements. For example, your speed, brand-wise requirements, or your country requirements. And each time you will go through a different place. So
are you planning on having basically some kind of peer-to-peer protocol which will allow clients to advertise, like, here I am, I'm in this country, here's my IP, or here's my, you know, identifier, and you can connect to this node to get VPN?
Yes, in the early stage, this will take place in a centralized way, meaning that nodes will advertise themselves on our central servers. But the goal of the first phase is to decentralize all aspects of Mysterium, and the discovery mechanism is one of those. So how it's currently set up, it's basically you you let the blockchain know about your availability, about your node availability, and certain parameters about it. And then anybody can look this up, and they can start calling your nodes, start negotiating process. Once that is done, they can connect to you. So yes, there's going to be a peer. It's I don't know. It's quite technical. It's described in a white paper how it will work. But yes, it will be completely decentralized at the end of the phase one.
And my understanding is that today you don't have like the MVP doesn't contain the compensation mechanism, right? So
No.
can you talk about, so just sort of people kind of testing the network, right? They're offering the VPN for free for testing purposes, and clients can connect to them just kind of freely based on your website. And then the protocol that goes on between the client and server, I believe, is OpenVPN, right?
Yeah. It's not entirely free. For the user, it's free. But for the node operators, we wanted to incentivize just a little bit. So we track all the node online time, and we track how much data has been flown through this node. Basically, node and the client report that back to the server. And based on this information, we will give a small bounty for that. And setting up nodes has been extremely difficult at the moment. You would have to have an external IP. You have to have Valdez, please correct me, a specific version of Linux. This external IP must not be a dynamic IP. So there's lots of limitations at the moment if you want to run a working node, and we basically wanted to incentivize that.
Cool. So take us through the next stages of the development there, where you're going to be including the compensation mechanism. So how will that mechanism work between the client and the server in the future?
In the future, once the once the client connects to the node, first they have a sort of well, what's that word? Negotiation between those softwares. Basically, a client sets up their parameters, a node sets up their parameters, their levels of risk, and so on, and the softwares negotiate. So let's say you run a node, and I'm a client. I connect to your node, and my client software doesn't have any reputational information about your node. So what happens is we will set a very low level of risk. For example, you will say, okay, I will deliver 50 megabytes of data, and you will pay me, I don't know, 1 cent for that. Once we agree, the transaction starts, and I start using your node. Once the 50 megabyte limit is reached, and that is being checked via a state channel signed by my software and your node software, so that both of us don't cheat each other. This information then goes to the smart contract, and the smart contract verifies if everything is okay, and then clears the payment. Basically, I will pay you whatever I owe you, which is 1 cent for that 50 megabyte worth of data. Now our softwares know that, okay, we had one transaction, it went well, the payment was clear, data was delivered. How about we raise the bar a little bit, and we said, okay, let's make it to 100 megabytes. So basically, it's a promise on both ends. Then I'm using the service again, and it clears again, and then it increases in time. By increasing it, this is making a, how to say it, a cheaper transaction, because every time you go into the blockchain and you clear the transaction, it costs a little bit. So in the beginning, it will cost more than the actual data, but once the trust level is sufficient, those transactions will be very cheap between the node and the client, I mean. So the trust level will grow basically over time.
And so what is the unit of account? How, like, are you using the MIST token to do these payments?
In the beginning, MIST token. Once we transition to profit sharing, it will be some other cryptocurrency. But yes, some cryptocurrency, of course.
So if presumably the MIST token is a volatile cryptocurrency, how that means that the price of VPN across every state channel negotiation changes.
Yeah, that's
So how do you deal with that issue?
That is something to be worked out. There are various ways. In the beginning, of course, we might use some centralized services to feed the price of the token into the software directly, and then it would calculate based on the preference of the user. For example, you set in your software that you want to pay, I don't know, 5 cents per gigabyte of data, US dollar cents. So it will do those calculations, but it has to get the price real time from oracles, from some centralized services. So it's still, how to say, there's still a trust issue. There are various services which are being built right now that might make a completely trustless service for that. Still work to be done on this front.
It's an interesting research topic, because on the one hand, you want to say, kind of like in your utility token scenario, right? You want to say, well, if people demand my VPN service, then they will demand my coin, and the more demand there is for my coin, the higher the price, right? So that's the general kind of return proposition for that. There's a relationship between utilization and price, and that is, in a lot of cases, that's not very precise. Like, how do you measure in Ethereum, for example, like how transactions interact with price? There are ways you can do it, but it's not exactly like, there's not an exact like mathematical relationship, perhaps. Now, what you're saying then is like, for example, if my VPN nodes can set the price and they actually fix the price at a dollar value, then does that actually then translate into increased demand for the token? If, because like demand increases, but then the actual token price of the service decreases to compensate for the dollar price.
Yeah.
So is it really driving demand, or is that just like a purely speculative kind of demand? So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but
I don't know the answer to that. Probably gonna be lots of factors factoring this. One thing, but one thing is clear, that once we transition away from using MIST token as an access token, this dynamic will change, and MIST token will be used as an access token in early stages, meaning that we will perform lots of testing during this phase and we don't expect a huge customer onboarding in this early stage. The product will be early, the network will be early, and it's 6 to 8 months down the road from now.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
What do you guys see as kind of the most challenging technological piece to implement here?
Alice, maybe you?
Well, we are already obstacle to them while doing MVP. It's like to solve all the different network restrictions in each internet service provider. Each country has some parts of some packets are blocked, some packets is routed very strangely. So it's this network obstacles. And our software will have to be very flexible on each different environment. It will have to adapt and find the way the packets can go through. I think this will be.
So just the diversity of kind of environments. But you see that as a bigger challenge than like developing the peer-to-peer protocol, for example. Is that right?
Yeah, and the decentralized applications, that's I never did very seriously before. Yeah, that there's recipes for that. Like all others are doing it. You just basically copycat, learn what they do, and yeah.
Well,
I don't see it as difficult.
Well, this is working mostly on the node side of the service, node and the client side of the service, basically making sure the VPN aspect is working fine. Unfortunately, we don't have other team member, Richardas, who has been designing the protocol and all the decentralization elements of the protocol. He would probably give you a different answer.
Gotcha. Cool. So we have about 10 minutes, but let's cover some of the the higher level fundraising issues around the Mysterium project, right? Because fundraising is probably what you want to focus least on. You want to be doing product, but at the same time, it's a very important kind of issue, especially when you're doing decentralized crowdfunding like you have done. So tell us a little bit about like maybe the corporate structure. Like, are you a company today, and where are you? What is your jurisdiction?
Our jurisdiction is well, we're building a company. Well, it's going to be a set of different jurisdictions. The launch takes place in Gibraltar, and development will take place in Switzerland, Zug, for various taxing and legal for that structure. And yes, so I guess I hope this answers.
Yes, and how have you been thinking about fundraise or capital today? Have you gotten kind of private seed investment? Obviously you're about to go into an ICO, but how has the project been funded so far?
We're working with Bitcoin Swiss. It's a Switzerland-based company that's onboarding people into similar token sales, and they allow people to join with their different fiat currencies from different countries. Also doing a KYC on each of their customers. So we had a pre-sale with them. It sold out fairly quickly. It was capped at 500,000 Swiss francs, which is basically 500,000 US dollars. We also have quite some interest in joining the sale from various private entities, private investors. Nothing has been sold as all the participation will take place during the crowd, the token sale, which starts on May 30th. But we have had some interest and talks with various people, entities, who are basically saying that they will participate as soon as it's open.
Awesome. So, so your project is interesting in that you're actually having kind of a pre-token sale, a public pre-token sale, right? That was your first round of 500,000
yes.
francs, and then you also have the main token sale, which is going to be larger. So,
Yeah.
can you tell us like what was the purpose of doing it in 2 steps and raising a little bit and then raising more, and kind of how does that translate to participation for the people in the main sale?
Okay. Well, the idea popped up back in 2016 October. That's when I started gathering an initial team. Well, all of these people had jobs at that moment. And basically what happened was, well, we started to have those funny thoughts, as we call them inside, to try and make this a reality and leave our working positions and start full-time on this project. So this is what happened. And well, eventually we needed some kind of startup money to basically get off the ground. So we did a very small initial seed round back in December. Well, basically ensuring that we have funds to prepare on all aspects, on the legal, on product, on protocol, and we can dedicate ourselves full time without trying to get additional income through other sources and then not being able to make it a full-time job.
Got it. So the 500,000 Swiss francs was to kind of support the initial development effort toward MVP?
No. 500 is this. 500 Swiss francs is the amount that is going into the token sale through Bitcoin Swiss. We don't have those money yet. It will come with the token sale. Back then it was $50,000. Yeah, very small.
But that initial capital was going to fund this sort of period of time where you're heading to token sale. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how many people are on your team today?
8 people now. Yeah, we just added a new person with us.
Excellent. And what are they like? What do they do? Is it mostly technology people? Is it marketing people? How does it break down?
We have well, we have me. Okay. We have I'm doing, I don't know, basically everything except coding. We have new person Vitas who's helping on legal side of things. There's one person who's helping with community management and communication.
So full-time marketeer, basically.
Yes, we have Valdas here, who's building a product, an MVP. We have Paulus, who's working with smart contracts. Richard, as he's working with the protocol and doing proof of concept tests. I hope I mentioned everybody.
All right, cool. And for your main token sale, can you talk a little bit about the structure of it and how much you're aiming to raise?
Mm-hmm. The structure is as follows. Up till we call it internally a soft cap. It's not really a soft cap. It's more like a milestone. So the soft cap is set at 6 million Swiss francs, and up till that amount, there's a 20% bonus, meaning that 1 Swiss franc will give you 1.2 MIST tokens. After this cap is met, the sale continues for a limited amount of time, set for 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And it's continuing towards the hard cap, at which point, if it's reached within this 70-hour limit, the sale will stop. The hard cap is set at 14 million.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Is the MIST token created already today?
Is it created today?
Yeah, or is the ERC-20 implementation of MIST, is that already deployed, or will that be deployed after the main sale?
It's gonna be deployed before the well, it's a very dynamic creation of the token, because we have this soft and a hard cap structure. So basically, we won't create all of the tokens in the beginning, but we will create them as tokens are coming in. And let's say
as people send buy-in transactions.
Yes, exactly.
Similar to what Golem did and the DAO before that.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Understood. So you kind of like you don't create a fixed initial supply ahead of time. You kind of let the sale generate, like it's a token creation event.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Very cool. All right, guys. Well, it looks like you have a lot of work to do. I hope that I wish you the best of luck on your token sale. Is there anything else that you want to say to people who might be watching before we go?
Oh, I just want to say thank you to all of the people. This has been, I don't know, it has it's way over my expectations, and the team and the community input. I'll just give you an example. We posted a draft of our white paper, hoping to get some feedback from the community, basically telling us what is wrong, what could be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
We got I think over 600 suggestions what to fix. It was a full-time job, basically going and looking through them, but they have been extremely valuable in improving the quality of the white paper. Lots of feedback on the MVP, lots of feedback on how to structure how to protect ourselves. We launched MVP. I was hoping for 100 nodes. Today I saw there's over 800 already. It's like, I don't know. This is amazing, and yeah, I want to thank everybody, basically.
Cool. That one of the benefits of having a global community all over the world. Right? You can source supporters and reviewers and testers from everywhere.
Yeah, and we're trying to be as open as we can with everything. Sometimes there's just not enough time for us to communicate everything, especially in the last days before the token sale. But yes, being transparent really helps, because community then can augment that to levels not expected by ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, cool. Well, thank you very much. I'm gonna stop the
very much,
broadcast. Guys, you can stick around for a few minutes if you'd like. But thank you everyone for watching.